You should have never come here. This story takes place in a small town nestled in the mountains of Montana. The town was once a bustling mining community, but when the mines dried up, the people left and the town became abandoned. The only thing that remained were the dilapidated buildings, rusted machinery, and the memories of those who once lived there. One day, a group of friends decided to explore the ghost town. They were fascinated by the stories they had heard about the town's tragic history and it being haunted by the ghosts of the miners who once worked there. They arrived at the town just before sunset, and as they walked down the deserted main street, they felt a sense of unease. As they entered one of the abandoned buildings, right off the bat, they heard strange noises and whispering that seemed to be coming from all around them. They brushed it off, thinking it was just their imagination playing tricks on them. They had all been so excited about this trip that it was only natural for their minds to get carried away. But as they continued to explore the town, they began to feel they were being watched. Every room they went into, they looked over their shoulders, totally expecting to see someone standing there. Then they started to see shadows moving on their own, on the walls and down the hallways, and then the temperature dropped suddenly. Night had fallen, and almost too terrified to move in the dark buildings, they decided to spend the night in one of the old abandoned houses, and that's when things took a turn for the worse. As they slept, they were awoken by a loud banging sound coming from the walls. They got up to investigate and saw the walls were covered in strange symbols and markings. Suddenly, they heard footsteps coming from down the hallway, but when they looked, no one was there. They started to panic and tried to leave, but the doors wouldn't budge. The windows were also locked tight, trapping them inside. As they sat there in fear, they heard a ghostly voice whisper, "You should have never come here." They realized too late that the stories they had heard were true. The ghost town was indeed haunted, and they were trapped with the restless spirits of the miners who had met their tragic end. The next morning, the group of friends were found huddled together in the abandoned house by hikers who had come to explore the ghost town. They were terrified and traumatized. They never spoke of the experience again, but the legend of the haunted ghost town continued to spread, warning others to stay away from the cursed and abandoned buildings. In the months that followed their terrifying encounter in the ghost town, the group of friends struggled to move past the trauma. They couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and strange things continued to happen around them. Shadows would move on their own, objects would seemingly levitate, and they heard whispers in the empty rooms. They sought help from paranormal investigators, but none of them could stop the ghostly activity in their homes. Some even refused to go near the group, convinced that they were cursed by the spirits of the ghost town. Determined to find answers, the friends decided to return to the abandoned town, this time armed with equipment to capture evidence of the paranormal activity. As they entered the town once again, they could feel the heavy energy that seemed to permeate the air. As they set up their equipment, they heard a voice whisper in their ears, "You should have never come back." And suddenly, their cameras and equipment started to malfunction. They realized they had made a big mistake coming back to the ghost town and that they had angered the spirits by returning. They packed up everything and started to leave when they heard loud chanting coming from all around them. It seemed louder as they ran towards the door to leave. Just then, the floorboards of the old building started to shake and rise and move violently up and down. One of the group reached the door to leave, but it wouldn't open. It was like it was nailed shut from the outside. The chanting was getting louder. So was the screams of the friends. They ran to the windows and they wouldn't open either. They banged on the glass, hoping it would break to no avail. Then all of a sudden, everything stopped. The loud chanting and the shaking of the floorboards rising up and down just stopped. Nobody could move. Nobody wanted to move. They were scared, thinking of what could happen next. After a couple of minutes, and when they were able to catch their breath, they noticed strange markings and symbols appearing on all the walls, just like the first time they visited the abandoned town. It was all over the walls, the floors, and the ceiling, and just like the first time, they had no idea what it meant. As they stood there, terrified and helpless, they heard a voice speak to them. It was a woman's voice. It was deep and menacing. They weren't sure what was more terrifying, the floorboards rising up and down, the loud chanting, or the sound of this woman's voice. It was deep and rough, like she'd been gargling with sand. It echoed off the walls as she yelled, "You have trespassed again. Now you are cursed." She repeated it over and over again. They ran to the door to escape once again, and to their surprise and relief, the door opened and they ran for their life to escape the little town in the mountains, and to never return to what they thought was just ghosts from time long past. But it was a witch who called the ghost town home. As they left the ghost town, they felt a sense of doom. They knew this wasn't the end of the witch and her curse.